Every generation of pilots swears the same oath: we are the future. They stand in the shadow of history, look to the sky, and believe that what came before them belongs in a museum. But sometimes the sky has a way of reminding them that legends never die. They only wait. The Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor was supposed to be untouchable. It was the pinnacle of speed, stealth, and dominance. Invisible to radar, deadly before the enemy even knew it was there. To the men and women who flew it, it wasn't just an aircraft. It was the end of evolution. So when the announcement came that they would be running an experimental exercise against an F-4 Phantom II, a jet built half a century earlier, laughter filled the room. A Phantom? That old brick? Why not pit us against a Wright Flyer while you're at it? The older officers didn't laugh. They exchanged quiet glances, men who remembered what the Phantom had done. It had been the workhorse of the Cold War, the beast that screamed over Vietnam and the Middle East, carrying two souls through the kind of chaos no simulator could reproduce. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't stealthy, but it had survived. The test was meant to be symbolic, a live flight data study comparing fifth-generation stealth fighters to legacy interceptors. The brass called it Project Echo Spear, but inside the hangars, the pilots called it the RELIC Run. At dawn, the airbase shimmered with heat. Two Raptors sat on the runway, their metallic skin gleaming like liquid mercury. Across from them, the Phantom waited. Twin engines, soot-stained fuselage, panels patched and repainted a dozen times. It looked ancient beside the Raptor's sleek geometry. Its pilot was Colonel Robert Keller, 63 years old, hair grey, eyes sharp as razors. He'd flown F-4s in his youth, back when you fought your enemy face to face and missiles missed more often than they hit. This flight would be his last before retirement. When he climbed the ladder into the cockpit, the younger pilots watching from the tarmac shook their heads. He's crazy. That thing's gonna fall apart before it even gets off the ground. But when the Phantom's engines ignited, the air itself seemed to remember. A deep, thunderous growl rolled across the base, not refined like the F-22's whisper, but alive, raw, defiant. "Control, this is Ghost One," Keller radioed, voice steady. "The relic is ready." The Raptors taxied beside him. Captain Ethan Ward, 28, top of his class, couldn't help but smirk. "Copy that, Ghost One. Try not to turn into dust before takeoff." Keller chuckled. "Dust, son, is what you'll be cleaning off my tail." The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The F-22s leapt into the air like arrows released from tension. A heartbeat later, the Phantom followed, slower but louder, climbing through the morning haze with a trail of fire. From the ground it looked impossible, youth and age sharing the same sky. One moved like silence, the other like thunder. The exercise was simple. Dogfight parameters, no live ammo, full telemetry. The F-22s had the advantage. Stealth systems, thrust vectoring, unmatched radar. The Phantom had none of it. At 20,000 feet, the Raptors disappeared from sight. Their radar cross-section was so small that even the ground stations lost them. Keller, alone in the older jet, flew by instinct, watching contrails, feeling air pressure shifts, scanning the sun for glints of light. He knew they were there. He could feel them. Then it came, a whisper in his headset. "Target acquired." Ward's voice, confident, cold. Before the lock tone finished, Keller rolled. The Phantom dropped altitude in a screaming dive, engines howling. The G-forces clawed at his chest. He leveled at 8,000 feet, banking hard left, eyes narrowing. Above him, the Raptors cut through cloud like blades. Ward pulled into pursuit, HUD glowing green. "You're mine, old man." But when he fired the simulated burst, his sensors blinked. No contact. The lock was gone. The Phantom had vanished. "Control, confirm radar integrity," Ward barked. "Radar is clean, Captain. Phantom's off scope." "How the hell?" Out of nowhere, a shadow flashed across his canopy. Keller's voice filled the radio, calm and amused. "You forgot, son. Ghosts don't show up on radar. The simulation tone screamed in Ward's headset. Hit registered. First round, Phantom. The tower erupted in disbelief. Officers leaned over consoles, whispering, "That can't be right." But it was. Up above, Ward gritted his teeth. Begin second run. And so began the duel that would rewrite everything the new generation thought they knew about air superiority. For the first time, the future was being hunted by its past. The sky had always been the Raptor's kingdom, high, silent, and untouchable. Its pilots had spent years believing in invincibility, a faith built on algorithms and stealth. But that morning, above the Pacific, the silence felt heavier than usual. Somewhere in it, a sound older than their machines echoed, the deep metallic snarl of twin J-79 engines that refused to fade. Colonel Robert Keller's Phantom sliced through the haze, its wings trembling slightly, its pilot smiling behind the oxygen mask. "You can hide from radar," he muttered, "but you can't hide from the wind." Captain Ethan Ward circled far above, scanning every inch of sky through his HUD. He's down there somewhere, this time no surprises. But arrogance is the one enemy radar can't detect. Ward dropped into a dive, the Raptor accelerating past Mach 1. He saw a flicker on his scope, faint, erratic, like static. The old Phantom. He locked, fired a simulated burst. "Kill confirmed," said Control. But Keller's laugh cut through the radio. "Not quite." The radar image blinked again and vanished. Ward frowned. He scanned visual, eyes darting through the canopy. Nothing but cloud. Then a shadow appeared beneath him. The Phantom roared up from below, vapor curling from its wings. Keller had used the ocean's reflection to mask his climb. Before Ward could react, his threat system screamed. Lock detected. A heartbeat later, a shrill tone filled Ward's headset, simulated missile impact. "Raptor 1, you're down." "Impossible," Ward growled. From the tower, silence. No one spoke. The second run had lasted 42 seconds. They tried again and again. Each time the result was the same. The Phantom, that smoke-stained, lumbering relic, outmaneuvered the Raptors by knowing the air they trusted too much. By the fourth engagement, Ward's squadron wasn't laughing anymore. The debriefing room felt smaller, the silence thicker. Data analysts whispered over telemetry, trying to find an explanation that didn't sound like magic. "Could be radar clutter," one muttered. "Maybe sensor lag." But Harding, the base commander, watching quietly from the corner, shook his head. "It's not the sensors, it's the pilot." On the fifth run, Ward changed tactics. No radar. No reliance on stealth, pure vision. He flew manually, eyes sharp, breath steady. This time he met the Phantom head-on. Two silhouettes tore across the clouds, one sleek and silver, one dark and angular. Keller's voice crackled through the comms. "Finally flying, are you?" Ward grinned. "You're not the only ghost up here." They circled each other like predators. The Phantom's turns were wider, heavier, but each motion deliberate. The Raptor sliced sharper, faster, but somehow less sure. Ward dove, Keller climbed. They met at the center of the sky, engines howling, crossing within meters. The air twisted into vapor and thunder. In that instant, both men understood something unspoken. The duel wasn't about dominance. It was about connection. Ward pulled up, expecting the Phantom to stall. Instead, it rolled inverted, diving behind him. Lock tone. Raptor 1, down again. Ward slammed his fist against the console. "How?" Keller's voice came through, calm as ever. "Because you're fighting the plane. I'm flying it." When they landed, the crowd that had once cheered the Raptors was silent. No one mocked the relic now. That night, the flight logs told an impossible truth. The Phantom had achieved valid locks in 67% of engagements. History was repeating itself. And this time, even the future couldn't stop it. The morning after the fifth engagement felt different. The base had lost its laughter. The corridors that once echoed with confident footsteps now sounded hollow, metallic, and slow. Inside the ready room, the hum of machines replaced the hum of pride. Screens flickered with data that no one wanted to read, replaying the same impossible truth. The Phantom, half a century old, had beaten the Raptor 5 times out of 7. Captain Ethan Ward sat alone at the far end of the table, staring at the telemetry printouts. The numbers mocked him. Every flight parameter said he should have won. Altitude advantage, energy retention, thrust-to-weight ratio, all in his favor. And yet, each graph ended the same way. Lock tone, hit confirmed, Raptor disabled. "Physics doesn't lie," said one of the analysts quietly behind him. Ward didn't look up. Neither does instinct. Across the hangar, technicians worked around the clock, scanning the Raptors for sensor faults, recalibrating radar systems, even checking for software corruption. Anything to explain why a jet from the 1960s could repeatedly outmaneuver stealth fighters from the 21st century. The answer they found frightened them. No glitches. The failure hadn't been mechanical. It had been human. By afternoon, command called an emergency briefing. The pilots gathered, uniforms crisp but faces pale. General Holt entered, his voice clipped and cold. "This was supposed to be a demonstration," he began. "Instead, we've got headlines calling our elite unit outflown by a museum piece. That ends today. Tomorrow we run the final test. Full spectrum engagement, simulated weapons active, endurance limit removed. You will end this." Ward raised his hand. "Sir, with respect, the data shows weakness," Holt snapped. "We'll correct it." He left the room without another word. Ward felt the anger rise in his chest, the same burning he'd felt after every failed run. But beneath the anger was something worse: doubt. That night, he found Colonel Robert Keller sitting beside the Phantom under dim floodlights, a cigarette glowing in the darkness. The old man looked as if he'd been carved from the metal he flew. "You ever get tired of being a ghost?" Ward asked quietly. Keller smiled, smoke curling around his words. "You ever get tired of pretending you're a god?" Ward hesitated. "You make it sound like we're opposites." "You trust numbers." Ward crossed his arms. "You think instinct beats stealth, beats supercruise and vector thrust." Keller flicked his cigarette into the shadows. "No, Captain. I think fearlessness does. The problem with your generation isn't your machines. It is that you've never been afraid enough to listen." Ward frowned. "Afraid?" "Fear keeps you alive," Keller said. "Fear makes you pay attention. It makes you humble. You kids fly like the sky owes you something, but it doesn't. It never has." The younger man said nothing. The Merlin-like hum of power units echoed from the maintenance bay nearby. "Tomorrow's your last run?" Keller asked. "Then stop trying to beat me," the old pilot said softly. "Start trying to understand me." When dawn came, the world felt sharper. The horizon glowed blood orange, the wind restless. The final engagement was set for open airspace off the California coast. No terrain limits, no altitude caps. Ward climbed into the Raptor, the cockpit lights bathing him in cold green. For the first time, he switched off his radar systems. "Control, this is Raptor 1. Running manual flight for the duration." Static crackled. "Manual? Captain, that's not protocol." "Neither is losing to history." He lifted off. Above him, Keller's Phantom roared into the rising sun, contrails twisting like ghostly ribbons. At 30,000 feet, they met. The two aircraft circled, testing, measuring. Ward spoke first. "Ghost 1, this is Raptor 1. No radar, no HUD, just sky." Keller laughed softly. "Finally, let's dance." The battle began. The Raptor climbed fast, slicing through the thin air while the Phantom stayed low, hugging the denser layers of atmosphere. The contrast was perfect. Precision versus instinct, silence versus thunder. Ward dove first, the F-22 a silver dagger cutting through the mist. The Phantom rolled, barely avoiding his path. The two jets crossed within seconds, shockwaves rippling through vapor. From the tower, engineers watched in disbelief. Every maneuver defied logic, the Phantom turning tighter than physics should allow, the Raptor countering with impossible acceleration. Ward felt the wind vibrate across the fuselage. For the first time, he wasn't thinking, he was feeling. Every motion came from rhythm, not code. He matched the Phantom's movements instinct for instinct, breath for breath. Then something strange happened. The air grew turbulent, the instruments flickered. Both aircraft vanished from radar simultaneously. "Control, we've lost both signals," a technician shouted. "Reacquire!" In the void above the sea, Ward and Keller continued their duel, alone, invisible, existing only by will. They circled tighter and tighter until even the horizon disappeared, replaced by a blur of motion and light. Keller's voice broke through the static. "This is it, son, the line between man and machine." Ward exhaled. "I'm ready." At near supersonic speed, the two aircraft plunged toward the ocean, twisting and rolling in perfect synchrony. Spray rose from the surface as they leveled out, flying side by side, predator and ghost, teacher and student. Ward saw Keller glance through the canopy, a nod of acknowledgement. Then the old man pulled away, climbing toward the blinding sun. "Where are you going?" Ward called. "Ward." Keller's voice came back calm, fading. "Up." The Phantom climbed higher, higher still. Its contrails curved into the light and vanished. Control regained contact seconds later. "Raptor 1, do you have visual on Ghost 1? "No," he said quietly. "He's gone." But the truth was stranger. The data from that final engagement showed anomalies no one could explain. Radar loops, double echoes, phantom signals that appeared and vanished like ripples on water. Some said Keller had pushed his jet too far. Others said the sensors malfunctioned. Ward said nothing. He landed in silence, the Raptor touching down with surgical grace. The base personnel waited for the Phantom's return. It never came. Search teams combed the ocean for days. No wreckage, no beacon, no oil slick, just wind. In the official report, the event was classified as pilot deviation, resulting in aircraft loss. But in the hangars, they called it something else. The day the ghost took the sky. The monitors glowed with static, the hum of air conditioning filling the void. He replayed the comm logs, the last words of the man he'd called an enemy, a rival, a mentor. "Stop trying to beat me. Start trying to understand me." Ward closed his eyes. For the first time, he understood what Keller meant. The Phantom hadn't vanished, it had ascended. And in that realization, Ward felt something he hadn't felt since his first flight. Wonder. He rose, walked to the hangar, and stood before his F-22. The surface reflected his face and the faint outline of another, the Phantom's silhouette superimposed by the hangar lights. He smiled. "Guess the relic isn't done teaching us yet." When he looked up, the stars above the runway were unusually bright. Somewhere out there, in the spaces between sound and silence, he thought he heard it again, the twin roar of J-79s fading into infinity. And in that moment, he knew, the future doesn't erase the past. It becomes it. When the sun rose the next morning, the hangar felt emptier than it ever had. The Phantom's slot on the runway was vacant, not destroyed, not dismantled, just missing. No wreckage, no smoke, nothing to mark where it had gone. Only silence. The official story spread fast. Mechanical failure, signal loss, pilot disorientation. Each excuse more desperate than the last. The truth was sealed behind layers of classified reports, each stamped with the same red word, restricted. Captain Ethan Ward stood by the observation deck, staring at the horizon where the Phantom had vanished. He replayed that last moment over and over. The climb, the flare of sunlight, the sudden emptiness. It didn't feel like a malfunction. It felt like choice. Down below, technicians were already dismantling the flight telemetry system. The brass wanted no trace of the data that didn't make sense. Anything that couldn't be explained was erased. "Orders from command," said one of the engineers. "They're calling it an equipment anomaly." Ward's jaw tightened. "And what are they calling Keller?" The man hesitated. "A casualty of misjudgment." Ward turned away. That's not what he was. Later that day, he was summoned to General Holt's office. The air smelled of disinfectant and paperwork. "Captain," Holt began, "you'll be reassigned immediately. This exercise is over." Ward frowned. "You're burying it." "The media doesn't need to know that a 60-year-old jet outperformed the most advanced aircraft in existence. You understand how that looks." "I understand exactly how it looks," Ward replied, voice low. "It looks like truth, sir." Holt leaned forward, saluting. That night, the hangar lights flickered through the blinds of his quarters. Somewhere outside, a storm brewed, not of rain, but of guilt. He'd been trained to obey, but obedience suddenly felt like betrayal. By midnight, he was back at the hangar. The doors were open to the wind, the F-22 resting in silence like a monument to pride. Beside it, on a maintenance table, lay Keller's flight helmet, scuffed, burnt around the edges, recovered floating miles off the coast. Inside it, a folded piece of paper, protected by a small plastic bag. Ward opened it with trembling hands. "If they try to erase the sky, remind them who wrote it." Ward stared at the words until his vision blurred. He folded the note and slipped it into his flight jacket. The next day, he broke protocol. He requested one final test. Not under supervision, not under orders. He logged it as maintenance verification flight. The control tower approved without suspicion. At dawn, the base was still. Clouds rolled low and heavy. Ward climbed into the F-22, the note still tucked in his pocket. "Control, this is Raptor 1, requesting clearance for short-range test flight. Copy, Raptor 1, you are clear for takeoff." As the engines roared to life, Ward whispered, "For you, Ghost 1." The Raptor lifted off the runway and disappeared into the grey. Up there, above the cloud layer, the air was clean, quiet in a way only the sky understands. Ward flew low over the sea, retracing the same route Keller had taken. Every wave, every glint of light on the water felt haunted. Then his radar flickered. He frowned. "Control, I'm getting a phantom signal." Static replied. The blip steadied. "Altitude 25,000 feet. Heading north." Ward's heart raced. "Ghost 1!" He increased throttle, chasing the signal into a shaft of sunlight breaking through the clouds. The light scattered across his canopy, blinding for an instant. When it cleared, he saw it, a shape in the distance, glinting silver against the blue. The F-4 Phantom. Ward blinked hard. Impossible. The old jet flew steady, wings shimmering with heat haze. Its movements were deliberate, not mechanical. Human. "Ghost 1, this is Raptor 1. Do you copy?" For a moment, the two aircraft flew in perfect formation, the future and the past, shoulder to shoulder once again. Inside the Phantom's canopy, there was no pilot, only an empty seat. Ward's breath caught. He couldn't explain what he saw, or what he felt. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even confusion. It was reverence. Then the Phantom tilted its wings slightly, a pilot's farewell gesture, and climbed straight into the sun. Ward followed, heart pounding. At 40,000 feet, his instruments went dark. Radar, only the whisper of air and the thunder of his heartbeat remained. He leveled off, but the Phantom was gone. When the systems rebooted seconds later, there was no trace, no radar return, no heat signature, nothing. Control's voice came through, urgent. "Raptor 1, do you copy? We lost you for 30 seconds. What happened? Ward looked into the endless light ahead. Nothing, he said softly. He returned to base in silence. When he landed, Command immediately confiscated the flight logs. His report was rewritten before he even signed it. The words anomalous radar contact replaced visual confirmation. They erased everything, but they couldn't erase what he'd seen. Over the following months, Ward quietly began collecting everything related to the Phantom project. Flight data, telemetry files, pilot testimonies, even old maintenance reports. Piece by piece, he built the record the world wasn't supposed to have, a secret archive titled The Ghost Files. He shared it only with one person, a young cadet named Rena Blake, one of the few who still asked questions others were afraid to. She had fire in her eyes, the same kind Keller once had. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked one night as they stood beside the dark runway. Ward smiled faintly. "Because someday, someone's going to ask again if the past still matters. You'll know what to tell them." The wind picked up. Far away, thunder rolled, distant, familiar, like an echo of twin engines rising somewhere beyond time. And though the official records claimed that the Phantom was lost forever, those who knew the truth understood the sky never loses what it loves. Somewhere up there, between fact and faith, the ghost still flew. It began quietly. A rumor, a whisper passed between hangars and simulator rooms, spreading like turbulence beneath clear skies. No one knew who started it or when. Some said it came from a corrupted data packet, others said it came from a forgotten backup drive. But soon, everyone in the flight community had heard the same phrase: the ghost files are real. At first, Command dismissed it as nonsense, but whispers have gravity, and the more they tried to silence it, the louder it grew. The files themselves were never officially released. They appeared in fragments, black box audio, telemetry graphs, still frames of radar anomalies. Some were clearly tampered with, others far too detailed to fake. The legend said there were 7 original files, all recorded during the last run of Project Echosphere, the classified duel between the F-22 Raptor and the F-4 Phantom. Each file contained one piece of a larger mystery, and together they told a story no one wanted to believe. One late night, inside a dimly lit training facility in Nevada, Lieutenant Rena Blake sat in front of a terminal, headphones on, staring at a grainy video feed. She'd found the file by accident while reviewing maintenance logs. It was labeled ES Audio 04. When she pressed play, a crackling voice came through, calm, old, steady. "This is Ghost 1, altitude 35,000. I see you, Raptor 1. Her pulse quickened. The voice continued. "If they try to erase the sky, remind them who wrote it." Then static. She pulled off her headset, trembling. "No way." The next morning she confronted Ward. He was older now, his uniform plain, his rank stripped quietly months after the incident. He worked as a civilian instructor, teaching basic flight mechanics. "You told me they deleted everything," she said, placing the drive on his desk. Ward didn't look surprised. "You weren't supposed to find that." "It's real, isn't it?" He exhaled. "Real enough to scare the people who built the Raptor." "Why hide it?" she demanded. "Why cover up a story that proves courage still matters?" He looked up, eyes weary. "Because courage can't be controlled." That sentence hung in the air like the echo of a jet long gone. That evening, Ward took her to a private hangar on the outskirts of the base, a place long abandoned where retired aircraft sat collecting dust. The air smelled of oil and ghosts. In the far corner, under a tarp, sat a shape she recognized immediately. "The Phantom," she whispered. Ward nodded. "Recovered piece by piece over 5 years, unofficially." She walked closer. The fuselage was scarred, patched together with mismatched panels, but it was unmistakable. The insignia, faded, but still visible. Ghost 1. Who else knows? She asked. No one who talks about it, Ward said. He opened a small panel near the cockpit and revealed a black metal box, the flight recorder. He handed it to her carefully, like an heirloom. This is all that survived, he said, and now it's yours. Rena stared at it, realizing the weight of what she held. Why me? Because I'm done fighting ghosts, he said softly. You're the next voice. Make sure the world hears it this time. The next weeks were chaos. Somehow the files leaked. No one knew how, though Ward suspected Rena had help from someone inside the communications division. The data spread across secure networks faster than the military could contain it. Screens across the world flickered with the impossible. Radar footage showing the Phantom climbing straight into the sun before vanishing. Audio recordings of Keller's calm voice cutting through static. Telemetry graphs ending abruptly, replaced by white noise. Public interest exploded. Aviation forums called it the most mysterious flight since Amelia Earhart. News anchors speculated about electromagnetic anomalies, secret weapons, or supernatural interference. But what caught the world's attention wasn't the data. It was the emotion. Keller's final message, "Remind them who wrote the sky," became a mantra. It appeared on murals, flight jackets, even tattoos. It wasn't just a line anymore. It was a code, and the Air Force could no longer deny what everyone already knew. The past wasn't gone. It was awake. Inside the Pentagon, meetings stretched for hours. Generals argued over damage control. Public trust had wavered, and the narrative was slipping. "We need to frame this as a myth," one advisor said. "Discredit it before it spreads further." But others disagreed. "If we dismiss it too hard, it'll look like a cover-up." Meanwhile, Rena kept the original flight recorder hidden. Inside it, she'd found something the others hadn't. A final segment of audio no one had ever played publicly. She listened to it alone one night, the room dark except for the glow of her laptop. The tape hissed, then Keller's voice returned. Faint, distant, almost peaceful. "This isn't about jets," he said. "It's about memory. Machines forget. People forget. But the sky never does." Then silence. She closed her eyes. By morning, the recording had been uploaded anonymously to an aviation forum. Within hours, it had millions of views. Pilots from around the world began posting their own stories, encounters with radar anomalies, strange signals, unexplained echoes during flights. The legend was no longer confined to one country or one project. It had become universal, the story of humanity's arrogance humbled by its own creation. Ward watched from afar, proud but wary. He knew the system would fight back, and it did. Within days, agents arrived at his home with sealed warrants. They seized his computers, his notebooks, even the old flight jacket he'd kept from Echo's spear. He didn't resist. "You can take the files," he told them. "You can't take what they mean." By the end of the week, official statements called the Ghost Files a collection of digitally manipulated hoaxes. The press moved on. The world forgot, or pretended to, but underground the myth only grew. Years later, cadets would whisper about the ghost that haunted the training simulations, a radar blip that appeared briefly during night missions, labeled automatically as Unknown Contact F-4. Every time it happened, the trainees reported hearing a faint sound in their headsets, the deep, rolling growl of twin engines that shouldn't exist anymore. And sometimes, just before the signal vanished, they swore they heard a voice. "Listen to the wind." Rena never confirmed nor denied her involvement in the leak. She transferred out of active service and became a historian of aviation ethics, her lectures always ending the same way. "History isn't data," she would say. "It's the echo of choices, and some echoes never fade." Afterward, she would step outside, look up at the sky and smile, waiting for that hum, that faint vibration that meant something was still watching. Because in the end, The ghost files weren't just evidence. They were a reminder, a warning, and a promise that somewhere, beyond sight and beyond command, the past was still flying, and it was watching to see if the future had finally learned to respect the sky. Years passed. The ghost files faded from headlines, buried under newer wars, newer machines, and newer promises of perfection. But in the quiet corners of hangars, in simulator rooms, in midnight conversations between cadets, the story endured. They called it the Code of Ghosts, an unwritten rule whispered only among pilots. It wasn't about tactics or maneuvers, it was about respect. Never mock what came before, they said. The sky remembers. At first, command tolerated the superstition as harmless folklore, but as the years rolled on, something began to shift. The new generation of aviators wasn't obsessed with dominance anymore. They were obsessed with understanding. Simulators that once focused on radar lock and missile tracking now included instinct flights, missions run with sensors disabled, instruments dimmed, vision alone. It was meant to build intuition. They called it echo mode. No one admitted where the name came from. Lieutenant Rena Blake, now captain, became the unofficial guardian of the story. She never claimed to have known Keller personally, but everyone suspected she had inherited something more than files. She had inherited conviction. In her lectures, she never spoke of ghosts or miracles. She spoke of humility, that unseen force that separates pilots from mere operators. The Phantom didn't defeat the Raptor, she would tell them. It reminded it how to listen. The words spread like fire through the academy. Soon, cadets were quoting her on walls, on notebooks, even inside their helmets. Listen to the wind. It became a quiet rebellion against automation, against arrogance, against forgetting. By 2037, the Air Force had changed. Unmanned drones ruled most skies now, controlled by artificial intelligence systems that calculated everything faster than any human mind. But deep inside the Nevada test ranges, one squadron refused to disband. It was small, elite, and entirely manned. Its name, Ghost Squadron. They flew restored jets, not the old F-4s, but modern craft modified for manual flight, stripped of full automation. The mission was experimental, to preserve human instinct warfare in an age of algorithms. Officially, the project didn't exist. Unofficially, it was the last beating heart of the sky. Every year on the anniversary of Keller's disappearance, the squadron gathered before dawn and launched into the desert air. No weapons, no objectives, just flight. Each pilot would take off one by one, climb to 30,000 feet, and cut all comms. For exactly 7 minutes they would fly with no sound but the rush of air, no signal but the rhythm in their hands. And when they landed, no one ever spoke about what they'd felt up there, but every one of them returned changed. One evening, after the run, Rena sat alone on the tarmac as the last orange light faded. A young cadet approached, Lieutenant Harris, new to the squadron, nervous and wide-eyed. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "is it true that he's still up there?" She looked at the horizon where the sky melted into black. "What do you think?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but when I cut comms today, I thought I heard something like an old engine far away." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe you did." He hesitated. "Do you believe in ghosts, ma'am?" She turned to him, her gaze calm. "No," she said softly. "I believe in lessons." The cadet nodded, not fully understanding, but knowing enough to never forget. Later that night, Rena returned to her quarters and opened a small wooden box she kept locked beneath her bunk. Inside was Keller's flight recorder, the one Ward had given her years ago. Its surface was scratched, its label almost gone. She ran her fingers over it, then pressed play. Static filled the room, followed by Keller's voice, faint but alive. It's about memory. She closed her eyes. For a moment, it felt as if the walls dissolved and she was up there again, weightless, endless, listening. When she opened her eyes, the clock read 03 Do. Outside, thunder rolled across the desert, though the forecast had predicted clear skies. She walked to the window. Above the base, a single flash of light darted across the stars, too slow for a meteor, too smooth for a drone. Her heart raced. The next morning, the control tower reported an unexplained radar contact at 25,000 feet, lasting exactly 7 minutes. It vanished without trace. The technicians logged it automatically as atmospheric echo, unidentified origin. But those who flew that day knew what it was. They didn't need confirmation. They'd already heard the sound. In the months that followed, Ghost Squadron's reputation spread quietly across every air force on the planet. Countries that had once competed now exchanged stories of radar ghosts appearing during storms, of drones deviating from flight paths as if avoiding something unseen. The phenomena became known in flight data circles as the Keller effect. To civilians, it was coincidence. Rena never chased explanations. She only taught understanding. During one international symposium on aerospace ethics, a journalist asked her the question that everyone else was too afraid to. "Captain Blake, do you think the ghost files were real?" She smiled. "Does it matter?" "Yes," she said gently, "and that's why we protect it, even when it hides behind myth." The journalist hesitated. "So you admit it?" The quote went viral overnight. It became the slogan of a generation raised on automation but hungry for authenticity. I only fly. Years passed, and Rena grew older. The Ghost Squadron was eventually decommissioned, its hangars sealed, its aircraft moved to museums. But the silence they left behind was louder than ever. On her last night as commander, she walked alone through the empty hangar. Dust drifted through beams of moonlight. The air smelled of kerosene and memory. At the far end, covered by a tarp, rested an aircraft she had never seen before, or perhaps one she had only heard about. She pulled the tarp aside. The insignia, faint but unmistakable. Ghost 1. Her breath caught. Pinned to the cockpit frame was a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age. In neat handwriting, "For those who remember that the wind speaks." She reached into her pocket, took out a pen, and beneath the message wrote 4 words. Then she placed her flight recorder beside the control stick, closed the canopy, and whispered, "Rest easy." Outside, the wind rose suddenly, strong enough to rattle the doors. For an instant, every light in the hangar flickered. The air vibrated with a sound older than technology, the low, rolling hum of twin J-79 engines starting far away. And then silence again, because the next morning the Phantom was gone. Only tire marks remained, fresh, perfect, leading straight toward the open runway and vanishing into the desert air. No alarms had triggered. No cameras recorded movement, but one radar station 50 miles north logged a brief contact at 30,000 feet. Identifier, unknown. Speed, Mach 1. Altitude, steady. Duration, 7 minutes. When investigators arrived, they found a note on Rena's desk, her handwriting neat, calm, and deliberate. "You can't erase what taught you to dream." She was never seen again. Others said she followed him. The official report called it an unauthorized departure. The pilots called it something else. And from that day forward, every trainee who took off into the empty blue sky carried the same unspoken hope, that somewhere out there between cloud and light, 2 souls still flew side by side, one of fire, one of faith, keeping the code alive. Because the sky, after all, remembers its own. There are stories that end when the engines stop, and there are others that begin in the silence that follows. The story of the Phantom was one of those, not a tale of war or technology, but of memory itself, woven into the endless fabric of the sky. Decades passed. The world changed again. Drones gave way to autonomous fleets. Satellites watched everything, everywhere. The human pilot, once the symbol of courage, became an endangered species, replaced by precision, governed by code. But even in a world ruled by algorithms, there were still nights when the sky whispered old names. Somewhere in the high Nevada desert, where the air was clean and still, a museum stood on the ruins of the old Ghost Squadron hangar. Tourists came during the day, taking pictures of aircraft that no longer flew, guided by holographic displays explaining how human flight had evolved beyond emotion. But when the sun went down, the silence returned, and the wind began to hum. The guards spoke of strange sounds, twin engines rolling in the distance, faint lights gliding across the horizon, radar anomalies that appeared exactly once a year. They laughed it off at first, but one of them, a young veteran named Cole, couldn't shake the feeling that something waited out there. On the anniversary of the return of the Ghost, Cole stayed behind after closing. He walked through the hangar alone, flashlight sweeping across the polished floor. Then he saw it, faint tire marks, identical to the ones that had been found decades ago. They led toward the massive hangar doors, ending at the edge where the desert began. His breath caught. Impossible. A noise echoed, soft, metallic, rhythmic, like a footstep, or maybe a heartbeat. He turned off the flashlight. The dark was complete, and in that darkness he heard it, the distant thunder of engines that no longer existed. He ran outside. The sky was black and endless, stars burned cold. Then just for a moment he saw them, 2 points of light, one silver, one blue, weaving together through the night. He stood there until they vanished. Later, when he reported it, the sensors confirmed a radar echo, altitude 30,000, duration 7 minutes. Identifier, unknown contact, F-4, F-22 hybrid. Command dismissed it as a glitch, but Cole knew better. He had seen something alive. Word spread again. Videos appeared online, blurry shapes, strange lights above the desert, sonic echoes recorded without known aircraft in range. Some said it was a hoax, others said it was a message. By then, the phrase, "listen to the wind," had become more than a code. It was an oath, spoken quietly by those who still believed that the sky was sacred, that it belonged not to machines, but to the hearts that dared to rise into it. In flight academies across the world, where cadets trained through virtual skies with neural-linked helmets, there was still one exercise that defied automation. It had no score, no sensors, no objectives. Only a name, the silence test. Cadets were told to ascend to maximum altitude, cut all systems, and simply glide. For 7 minutes, they would experience what their predecessors once called the real sky. Most returned in silence, changed in ways they couldn't explain. Some said they saw flashes of light, heard voices in the static, or felt a pressure in the air, like a presence brushing against them. Instructors never confirmed nor denied it. They only nodded knowingly. One day, during a symposium on aerospace heritage, a holographic archive was unveiled, a reconstruction of Keller's final flight path, digitally rendered from declassified data. The simulation displayed his voice at the end, reconstructed by AI from fragments of the black box. But as the playback ended, something happened. The screen glitched, flickered, and new audio played, one not in the system's memory. A voice, calm, timeless. This isn't about who won. It's about who remembers. The technicians froze. The audio looped once, then cut to static. Afterward, no one could find the source file. The next day, journalists filled the news feeds with headlines. "The Phantom speaks again." Some mocked it, some feared it. But for pilots, the few still left, it was sacred. Among them was a young woman, Commander Lara Quinn, the last human to pilot a manned interceptor. She had grown up hearing her grandfather speak of the ghost files as bedtime stories. Now she carried their legacy in her blood. She requested permission to perform one last manual flight before her aircraft was retired to the museum. It was denied, so she flew anyway. On a cold morning in January, she took off from Groom Lake in a jet older than her, an F-15 modified for atmospheric testing. The air was thin, the desert below stretching like a forgotten map. As she climbed past 35,000 feet, the comms cut out. Static filled her ears. Then she heard it, faint, buried in the noise, but clear enough to recognize, the hum of twin J-79s. She smiled. Ghost 1. If you're out there, I could use a wingman. No answer, but the air shifted. Her instruments fluttered, temperature drop, pressure spike, radar interference. Then a shadow appeared off her left wing. Silver, steady, impossible. The Phantom. Her heart raced. You're real. It tilted its wings, just like the old stories said. She matched the gesture. For a few moments they flew together, through light, through silence, through time itself. Then the Phantom began to climb. Wait, she called, don't go. The radio hissed once. A voice answered, old and kind. The sky remembers, Commander. Fly true. Then it vanished into the sun. Her instruments stabilized. Comms returned. She laughed through tears. Copy that, Ghost 1. When she landed, no one believed her. But when they checked the radar logs, there it was again. A single contact, altitude 39,000, duration 7 minutes. Identifier, F-4 Phantom, Ghost 1. That was the last time anyone ever saw it. But its story didn't end. Years later, the Ghost Squadron Museum was closed for renovation. During the process, workers discovered a sealed container buried beneath the hangar floor. Inside was a single flight helmet, polished, immaculate, bearing 2 names etched side by side, W. Carter, R. Keller. And below them, a line engraved into the metal, machines rise and fall, the wind stays. When the museum reopened, that helmet became the centerpiece. Visitors would stand before it, staring, feeling something they couldn't explain, as if the air itself hummed around it. No matter the hour, no matter the weather, if you listened closely, you could always hear it. The low, steady rhythm of twin engines, somewhere beyond hearing, like a heartbeat that refused to die. The plaque beneath it read simply, "The sky never forgets." And outside, high above the desert, 2 contrails still crossed paths once a year, one silver, one blue, fading slowly into the light.